Okay, I think we're ready to go. Great. Full house in here. I just want to welcome everybody to the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting of April 7th, 2026. Before we start the meeting, I'd like to introduce myself to the committee. I'm Councillor Misty Olson, and I've been appointed as a member of this committee and alternative chair by council, as Councillor Jansen has competing priorities at this time. I'd also like to note that Councillor Ward sends his regrets and he is unable to join us this evening. So you get me as chair, so please go easy on me tonight. I'd also like to acknowledge with respect that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, and we're honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Kosapsum nations. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. May I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting as presented? Great, thank you, Kathleen. The motion that the agenda of the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting of April 7th, 2026 be adopted as presented. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you, carried. Next, we have the minutes from the March 2nd, 2026 meeting. Before we consider adoption, were there any errors or omissions from the committee members to note? And seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting? Moved by Kathleen, and that's that the minutes of the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting of March 2nd, 2026 be adopted as presented. All in favor? And that's unanimous, and that's carried. Thank you. So now we'll move into public participation. Members of the public are now invited to present concerns or ask questions of the committee, and we welcome your input. Please note that comments pertaining to matters that have been subject to a public hearing are prohibited at this meeting. We will invite folks up. You'll have 2 minutes. When you come up to the mic, you'll press your button. It'll flash amber when you're halfway through, and then at 2 minutes, you'll be cut off, essentially. We've had one written submission that was received after agenda publication and will now be appended to the agenda. So if I can get a show of hands of who would like to speak during public participation this evening. Okay, if you have a question, I invite you to come up to the mic. And if you can just press the button and state your name and your address, or just that you live in Colwood, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Press here. John Ruff, 721 Claudette Court. I'm just wondering when we'll be able to ask questions regarding possible construction above us. It's on the I think it's 3415 Fulton.
Okay, so would you like to, what we can do is I can invite you up to speak in advance of 5.3. So that is 5.3 on the agenda tonight. If you'd like to come up and speak at that time, I'd be happy to invite you up.
Can I speak after they've done their, because I'd like to hear what they have to say first, or is that?
No, you can speak before the agenda item.
Okay.
Would you like to do that? And then there is cards that are up there, and just for everybody else that wants to participate as well, there's cards up there. So if you have direct questions for this committee or for staff, you're welcome to take a card and email your questions and they will be answered.
Perfect.
So would you like to come up during 5.3?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry, and your name again?
John.
John. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Come on up. Hi. Just press your button if you can. No, just on the microphone. If you press that. No, it's on the base there. There you go. And if you, you got it. If you could, oh, you turned it off. And if you could just state your name and your address if you're comfortable, just that you live in Colwood before.
I'm Rudy Stalker. I live on Demel Place, 724 Demel Place in Colwood here. And I also would like to address 5.3 just prior to that
okay, great.
Element of the meeting. Thanks.
Great. Is there anyone else that would like to come up for public participation at this time? And not seeing anyone, and I don't think we have anyone online for public participation. So let's do a last call for public participation. If anybody wanted to come up and speak. Okay, and seeing none, we'll move on to new business. I just wanted to note in the most recent Planning and Land Use Committee meeting that it highlighted the importance of transparency and council oversight in the development process. So I think it's important that this committee approaches these applications with the same level of diligence, ensuring that we fully understand both the rationale and the implications of the variances that are being requested tonight. And before we begin, there are some presentations that we're going to receive tonight, and I'd like to try and keep the questions to clarifying the presentation, and then leaving time for discussion once there's a motion on the floor. So it just helps to keep the meeting to run smoothly and seamlessly. So with that being said, we'll move on to 5.1, Development Variance Permit 3555 Producers Way. Which is the first item on our agenda. The committee will have the opportunity to listen to the presentation from staff and consider recommendations to endorse prior to forwarding it to council. With that, I'll invite Mari Bosworth, Manager of Planning, to introduce the item and provide the committee with a presentation prior to opening up the floor for questions and then for committee discussion. So thank you, Mari. If you could introduce the item, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening, committee. Yes, so this is Development Variance Permit 17 for the property at 3555 Producers Way. And this is the long-term care home proposed in Royal Bay. So the application is for 3 variances. We have Matt Blakely here, our senior planner, to present the application, and the applicant is also here this evening for a presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mari. Before I start, I just wanted to note that I'm presenting on behalf of Kaitlyn Suzuki, who's the file manager for this application, but was unable to attend this evening. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide a high-level summary of the development variance permit application number DVP 17 for the property located at 355 Producers Way. A more detailed analysis and supporting information are provided in the submitted staff report. Off to a good start. There we go. The applicant is proposing a long-term care home at 355 Producers Way in Royal Bay. The building would feature 2 towers of long-term care and hospice beds over a connecting first floor block, which includes childcare, adult daycare, and village square amenities for the residents. As Mari said, there's 3 variance requests for this development. The first one is the maximum permitted building height from 26 meters to 29 meters. There's also a variance request to increase the maximum permitted rooftop coverage from 12% to 20%, and a variance request to increase the maximum permitted retaining wall height from 1.2 meters to 5.3 meters. So before I get a little bit further into those variance requests, just some site context. The subject property includes 2 separate legal lots located at 355 Producers Way in Royal Bay, Latoria South. The properties are in areas 4 and 5 of the CD28 Royal Bay zone, and they're also in the Seaside Village OCP land use designation. So Seaside Village land use designation, which is shown on the left, is identified in the OCP as one of 2 primary centers in Colwood. The subject property is also within areas 4 and 5 of the Commons, which is the designated in the Latoria South sub-area plan, shown on the right. These areas are supportive of a variety of uses, including institutional uses, like the proposed long-term care facility. The Seaside Village designation supports built forms up to 12 stories and a floor area ratio of 3.5. While areas 4 and 5 support a smaller built form of up to 6 stories and an FAR floor area ratio of 3. The OCP, including the Latoria South sub-area plan, defines design guidelines for the commons. This includes guidelines that speak to reducing the visual impact of retaining walls through the use of stone materials, landscaping, and orienting the walls away from public view using step backs, building articulation, and varied materials to break up the building mass of larger buildings, as well as screening mechanical roof elements. Should be noted that while there are no design guidelines for this area, a form and character development permit is not required for institutional uses like the proposed long-term care facility. Section 10.33.5.4b permits a building height of 26 meters or 6 stories for healthcare facilities in Area 4 of the CD28 zone. While the majority of the building meets this requirement, the rooftop service rooms increase the total building height to 28.9 meters. To permit this, the applicant is requesting a variance to increase the permitted building height to 29 meters. As mentioned, the majority of the building meets the maximum building height, with only the service rooms exceeding this. The rooms make up a small portion of the total building, with only 6.3% of the total building being over the maximum height. Despite the application not requiring a form and character development permit, the proposal does generally align with many of the building form design guidelines for this area. The proposal uses variations in building materials and colors, as well as horizontal and vertical building articulation, as highlighted by the one-story center block shown in the visual there, which helps break up the massing of the building. As a result, staff are supportive of this variance request, as most of the building meets the height requirement. The small size of the service rooms and the building design help to reduce the visual impact. And as noted by the applicant, the service rooms house equipment required for the function of the building. So the roof coverage proposed, so section 10.33.5.4 permits a maximum rooftop coverage of 12%. 18.9% roof coverage has been proposed, and the applicant is requesting a variance to increase the permitted rooftop coverage to 20%. The image shows a view of the roof with the service rooms highlighted in orange and additional equipment highlighted in yellow. The visual impact of this rooftop equipment has been mitigated through multiple methods. The 1.1 meter tall parapets partially block the mechanical equipment from view. This equipment is also located away from the building edges, further limiting their visual impact, particularly from the public street, as shown in the bottom two renderings. The larger units will also use cladding to visually appear as part of the building. Considering the fact that the equipment is necessary for the operation of the proposed long-term care home and the design solutions proposed to limit the visual impact of the rooftop equipment, staff are supportive of this variance request. Section 2.1.20 permits a maximum retaining wall height of 1.2 meters. The proposed development includes multiple oversized retaining walls, with the tallest wall having a maximum height of 5.3 meters. The proposed walls are located in 3 main areas. Study area 1, as shown on the image, where the walls provide a flat outdoor area for the childcare space and separate it from the loading area. The walls in study area 2 support the loading areas, which is set at a lower elevation to the building and to Machosen Road. And finally, the walls in study areas 3 and 4 help to create a flat outdoor area for the hospice rooms. To allow these walls, the application is requesting a variance to increase the permitted retaining wall height from 1.2 meters to 5.3 meters. The visual impact of these walls is mitigated in alignment with OCP guidelines. Most of these walls use a stone texture material. The location and orientation of the walls also help to reduce the visual impacts, with most of the walls being oriented away from the public, facing the interior of the site, or located away from public areas. Landscaping is also used to further screen these walls, particularly for the walls in study area 1 by the childcare area and study area 3, where the wall runs along McChosen Road. Staff are also supportive of these variances. Development notification signs were posted on the subject property, and notification postcards will be sent to neighboring properties within 100 meters of the subject property prior to council consideration of the variance request. Committee may choose to recommend to council the staff recommendation, which is to approve all 3 variances, which would increase the permitted building height from 26 meters to 29 meters, increase the permitted roof coverage from 12% to 20%, and increase the maximum retaining wall height from 1.2 meters to 5.3 meters. Alternatively, committee may choose to recommend that the variance requests are deferred for more information, that they are denied, or to provide another option for council consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the chair, would you like for questions now or the applicant presentation before questions?
Is the committee comfortable with the applicant going forward with the presentation? And then we'll go to questions. Okay, great. Yeah.
Okay, then I'd like to invite Stefan Scholzen, architect with Stantec Architecture, to present. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you.
Want it red or? Okay. Great, thanks. I'm Stefan Scholzen, architect with Stantec. I'm leading this project. So here we have just a rendering of the building as it's currently designed, looking at it from the Producer's Way side. So it's kind of caught in a spot where we've got frontages to both sides. So, but the main entry is from the Producer's Way. So that's our focus on it. What did you? There we go. Okay, so to address the building height, we have squeezed the floor to floor heights as tightly as we can get, but given the nature of the facility with the mechanical and electrical systems in it, there's only so far we can get it down. So a typical residential building would be closer to 3 to 3.2 meters. We've got it down to 3.6 to bring that height down as much as we can to keep within the bylaw requirements. So the majority of the building meets that. And then the localized areas that are above the height, one of it includes the elevator overrun, which is typically outside of the height limits, but it also has our distributed antenna systems. So that is for the CREST systems and then for cellular service to improve communications within the building. So it's a functional requirement. And given the sort of the area pressures within the building as we squeeze things down to meet our project budgets, that was the space we had to, so it made sense to put it up there. And like I say, we've confined that to a fairly localized area to minimize that height overrun. And then just in here, we're just showing a couple of where how the average grade has been taken around the building. The site does step down. So from the main entry down to the loading dock, we've got about a 4.5 meter drop, or closer to 5, I guess, to bring it around, because all of the access is from producers, not from the Chosen Road side. And then just to give it a couple of just indicative diagrams to show how it would relate to a typical 6-story residential building across the street, which is the bulk of the development in the area. So it's, slightly higher, but not dominating that landscape and with overlook or anything like that. So this here just indicating okay, this is showing our roof coverage. So moving into the next part of it, the mechanical unit systems that are employed on this building, again, they're a little bit different than a typical residential project. So the air handlers, they are quite large, but we've tried to center them on the building again, so they're not out of the edge. They're pulled back as much as we can. We're incorporating metal cladding on the outside of the unit itself. So it's actually integrated onto the unit, so it will look like an extension of the building. And then there's a small extension of screening around where the duct run comes out the back, because it is quite large. And then we're also proposing to paint that, so it would be, so you're not just going to get a big silver duct poking out the back of that. And then we've included in the roof coverage request those rooftop rooms, just as a to cover that. So I think we're at about 18, we're just over 18% right now. The request for 20, just to have a little bit of wiggle room, as because mechanical engineers tend to slip things in on me more than we'd expected. So that's the strategy there. To screen these, what we've done is we've raised the parapets of the building, so they actually sit up at a guardrail height. So it does a couple of functions. It makes it a little safer for staff working up there, but it also gives a little bit of visual screening. So the lower units, they don't get any individual screening themselves, because you won't see them from street level. But and then anything poking up above that, so on the big air handlers, they'll get separate screening on them. Okay. So this just gives a good indication of sort of from street level views and some aerials, just to show how those are located. Really, when you're looking at those street level views, it's not a very impactful presence on those rooftop units. They're fairly obscured. So for the retaining walls, as I mentioned, there's a fair bit of site topography drop on the site. So in order to accommodate that, because the frontage is on the high side of the site, we've got to bring vehicles down into the loading area. So the area 1, where we come down, we've got a roadway that comes down to bring us down to the loading area. So the retaining wall's in there. It's strictly to serve that area. And to accommodate then our childcare play area at the south end. So that is the one spot where we hit 5.3 meters, and it's in a very small section of it. Most of them are sort of more in the 1.5 to 2 meter range. And what we're proposing is an MSE wall. So it's a kind of a rock finish. So it's not just a standard concrete lock block. They're around, I mean, all of the retaining walls in Langford that have those, not nearly to that extent. So we're trying to offset that. And then in front of all of those, we've got landscape planting to help offset the visual impact of that. So that's at the south end. And then the north end, we've got a couple of corners. There's a dedicated courtyard for the hospice area. For the patients that are in that on the main floor. So they've got, in order to facilitate a level area, we had to bring up the corners. So we've got localized retaining wall, and then what we've done is just graded up with our site to help mediate how much we need. So that kind of deals with that. And then these are just a couple of more detailed sections of where that's at. So along the parking area, at the loading area, the south end, as mentioned, that is actually below Machosen Road. So that retaining wall faces inwards, and it maxes out at about 2 meters along the Machosen Road side. And in that boulevard, or between the property line and our retaining wall, we've got some landscape screening to help further kind of obscure that area. And then this is at the north end. So in the lower right, that's what you would see along the Chosen Road. So really small area of retaining wall projecting out from the corner of the building. And then the one on the bottom left is actually kind of tucked in at the back. It's in behind the lift station, which is just a secondary service access to the building. And that covers what our request is. Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation. I will look to the committee to see if we have any specific questions for the applicant or for staff regarding the presentation this evening. Seeing no questions. I knew it. Mr. Perry.
Hi, when it comes to the, I'll maybe work it a little bit backwards. You mentioned the parapets on the roof line being at like waist height. Are those at the 26 meter height, or like
Those
the
should be,
roof line will be at 26 plus the
no, the parapet.
parapet? Sorry,
Yeah,
can you
it's to
repeat?
the top of parapet is where we're
Top of
taking the
parapet is
building height.
26,
Yeah,
and then
so they're a bit below that, I think.
and for the equipment that you're or for all instances where you're exceeding the 26 meter height, the overrun for the elevators are the most notable ones where, and then the air handlers are going to be less than that.
Correct.
Can you elaborate on the difference and what the total height of the air handler units will be?
So the air handlers, they're upwards of about 5 meters tall. So from roof level, to the top of that. And then we've got how high was the overrun on the elevator? It was 18 feet. And what we had sized it to was a worst case scenario because we haven't tendered that scope yet. So we're hoping that actually comes down a bit. And that's really just isolated to the one elevator, because we have to take a service elevator up there for maintenance. There are two other elevators in each elevator bank, and they're a bit lower. So they are aligned with the DAS room, the service room that's up there.
Mhm. And then with respect to the air handlers and chillers, what consideration for having those internal or underneath the in the interior, not interior, in the basement level?
In the building, basement level is quite full because we've got our mechanical plant down in there. So we've looked at all sorts of options, bringing into split units inside the rooms and things like that. In a building like this, there's a lot of consideration for infection prevention and control. So it negates that as an option. So that's why they've ended up on the roof. We just don't have the floor area inside the building to bring those things in there.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, okay, Gina. Over to you.
With regard to this screening and the finishing colors on the building, could you just elaborate the renderings? They show blue and black, they show blues, so what color impact are we going to have on the building?
This is the intended color scheme. So it's going to be a mix of blues. We've got some wood grain. So the terracotta-ish color. We've got some wood grain metal cladding at the lower levels to differentiate the functions of the main floor, because it is different. Like the resident rooms for long-term care are from level 2 to 6. So we've kind of established that as our transition point. Because on main level, we've got hospice on the north end, we've got an adult day program and a childcare on the south end. So we've gone with all metal cladding in a variety of different profiles and orientations to give it some visual interest and to offset the overall mass of the building.
So the black cladding that's on the major column in the corner
It's a dark blue.
it is a dark blue.
Yes. Yeah, and we've got some vertical, it's hard to see in here, but in that middle one on the right, there are some vertical strips of white to try and offset so it's not just a monochrome palette. So we've worked to try and integrate that in there to give it a bit of visual interest.
And then around the air handling units, it would be a different shade of blue?
Yes, yeah, and I think we tied it to, I think I tied it to the lighter blue cladding. I think is where we have it right now.
I'm just thinking of, I drive that road very often,
Mhm.
coming down the hill, you will see the roof, as you're coming down the hill. I realize from the street, you don't see a lot of it, but coming down the hill, you will. So
Yes.
so I just really encourage you to look at the colors of the screening, the impact of those colors. And being a hospice and daycare and seniors facility, I'd like it to be happy.
Yes.
So the black was a concern that it's a dark blue.
It's a
Actually,
darker
better.
blue.
Yeah.
The rendering doesn't really do it justice until you actually get the sample pieces. It's a lot lighter than it appears. Yeah, and at the main level, we've incorporated some colors at the various entry canopies to give it a little bit of differentiation on the different programs.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, I have a question. So I noted and I believe it was the staff report, but perhaps it was in the presentation, that the applicant was working to raise the grading in these areas to further reduce the height of these retaining walls. So I was
Yes.
just curious, what is that reduction that you're working to achieve? And could this reduce the variance being requested?
I think we've graded it within an inch of its life at this point.
Okay,
Um,
fair.
so
I just had to ask.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when we originally set out, I mean, obviously it's like, oh, there's a big drop. So there were, we've cut out a significant portion of what the retaining walls could have been. Particularly at the north end where we've got the hospice courtyard. Cause we've ended up having to shrink the courtyard in order to make that work. So that it doesn't get too steep because they still have to maintain it.
Right.
So that's one of the considerations. Like we can only take it so far. They still got to be able to mow the lawn without it being too steep.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I think the other variance requests seem reasonable to me. But if nobody has any other further questions, then there is a staff recommendation for the committee to consider if someone wants to put that motion on the floor for. Okay, great. Thank you. Kathleen. Okay, so the staff recommendation is in front of you. Do we want to open the floor for discussion? Is there any further discussion on this item? Mr. Perry, over to you.
With regard to the current state of the applicant and development permit, where are we in the process here? Do they have a development permit and we're asking for a variance, or is this asking for a variance before a permit is granted?
Thank you for the question. So this request is just for the variance because it's an institutional use. It does not require a development permit.
All right. And when it comes to how the city can manage the language of our recommendations, I think what is being asked for today is reasonable. It's the subject to change consideration that is worth evaluating. So are we able to say for the particular instances that are being proposed, then we are able to grant the variance? Because, for example, say we do the retaining wall, and as mentioned, there's just one small section that actually reaches up to 5.3, but by the time the actual building is built, then a substantially larger amount of retaining wall is at a higher level. So just trying to understand if we can manage that through the language or if that is overreach.
Thank you for the question. So these plans will be attached to the actual development permit itself. So these variances are for these specific plans.
In the plans, and forgive me if I wasn't able to deduce the exact amounts, but I wasn't able to understand, even in reading the agenda item provided, to what extent was at 5.3 meters. So do we believe that the plans provided that the variance would be associated to specifically outlines the amounts and locations beyond the just the areas of interest, or whatever the language was used for the areas?
Yeah, so the appendices to the development permit will be the plans that will clearly show where each of these variances apply. For the retaining walls, we typically will include the length as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. And you know, I can understand that the form and character is not required for institutional use, correct? But we can still evaluate the building's design through alignment with the OCP. And if there isn't any other further comments, I just wanted to note that, you know, I was concerned a little bit in the beginning about the significant set of variances. You know, the height seems reasonable to me. The roof coverage, given the need to support the mechanical overruns, it all is pretty clear. So it makes sense to me. I think I have a better clarity with respect to the site constraints and the building's higher complexity of systems and the rationale behind the variance for the retaining wall. So I don't really have any issues making this recommendation to council. So if there are no other comments to be made or questions, then I would just, yeah, I'll call the question on the staff recommendation. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 5.2, development variance permit 3501 Olympian Way, which is our next item for committee's consideration. Mari, I'll ask that you can introduce this item again prior to opening the floor for committee questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is development variance permit 10 for the property at 3501 Olympian Way. This variance request is to decrease the flanking street setback from 7.5 meters to 5.5 meters. We have Richard Roy here, who's our senior planner, to present the application. The applicant is also here in attendance and they have a presentation as well. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Please
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Mari. Good evening, Chair and committee members. So on screen before you is a presentation giving an overview of the development variance permit request for 3501 Olympian Way. The proposal is for a 6-story, 90-unit apartment building with all required parking provided on site. The variance request before you is to reduce the flanking side yard setback from 7.5 meters to 5.5 meters. The request is made as a proposal has pushed the building outside of the riparian area located on the site. A little bit of site context. The property is located on the southeast corner of the Latoria VMP roundabout. The lot is designated neighborhood hillside within the OCP and falls within Area 4 of the CD2 Olympic View Zone. The property was also subject of a rezoning, a zoning amendment in 2022 to permit the apartment building use. As mentioned, the variance request is to be applied to section 10.6.7, the land use bylaw, which requires that a 7.5 meter setback on the flanking side yard. For clarity, this the setback is applied to the side fronting Olympian Way. As you can see in the picture on screen, the frontage along Olympian Way jogs slightly towards the center of the property. The red line on the image represents a 7.5 meter setback. And as demonstrated, the building setback along the frontage is inconsistent due to the curve in the road right away. The maximum projection towards the road occurs at the apex of the curve, where the building is approximately 2.5 meters closer to the road. Staff are providing support for this variance request as it assists in keeping the building outside the on-site riparian area. The variance does not directly affect adjacent properties, only the road frontage. And the proposal aligns with the OCP and Olympic View policies for site adaptive, environmentally sensitive design. So a development sign has been placed on the property. It's been there a while. Postcards with details of the variance will be sent out to neighbors within 100 meters of the property as well. The following options are before the Planning and Land Use Committee this evening. Staff recommendation is to approve the variance request. The applicant, as Mari mentioned, the applicant is here to provide a presentation and answer questions. And should the committee have any questions for staff, I will be happy to respond.
Thank you, Richard. So I think if the committee is comfortable with it, we'll let the applicant do their presentation and then we'll go to questions after that, if that's okay. Perfect. Thank you and welcome. You might just want to push your gray button to the right of you. There you go.
There we go. Okay, thank you. So my name is Matthew Fitzgerald. I'm Director of Development with West Urban Developments. Thanks to the committee and staff for their time administering our application. I'm joined here by Rob Pringle behind me. Yeah, he's principal with Union Architecture and the architect for this development. So yeah, as staff highlighted, this proposal is part of the Olympic View Committee our community. It's a 90-unit apartment building, 6 stories in height, with both surface and underground parking, as well as a green space and associated amenities on site. To develop the property, we required a series of permits. The first was an environmental development permit. Second was a form and character development permit. We worked with staff and the Ministry of Environment over the last year and a bit to satisfy all the requirements of those two permits. And now next step here is the variance that's the subject of the meeting tonight. So I think I just wanted to provide a bit more context to some of the site constraints that was mentioned in staff's presentation. So on screen here, you can see this is the site plan. You can see the building, parking layout, and the property lines are the black hatched lines going around the property. So the first greatest development constraint is the riparian area. You can see it in green on the edge of the property there, taking up about a quarter of the overall property. So that is a no development area. We can't develop in there. Includes the creek and then associated buffers that have to be protected during construction and then maintained after construction. So again, this is a no development area, and we have worked again with the Ministry of Environment and obtained the required environmental permits pertaining to that area. The second constraint has to do with vehicular access. So in the yellow area shows the access to the site. And as part of the subdivision and overall rezoning of the property, this was prescribed. This location represents the safest vehicle access for both sight lines for vehicles leaving and entering the site. And safest point as it also aligns with the driveway across the street. So this is actually built now. The driveway is already in place as part of the subdivision, and not something we propose to change as part of this development, but it does provide a further constraint for how the site's developed. Third constraint here, this is actually a covenant registered on title. So again, as part of the previous approvals, covenant was registered pertaining to buffering of the future development from surrounding land uses. So you can see it in green on the plan. It does overlap with the riparian area, but there is a new section added in addition on the south property line. And that buffer, again, is a no-build area and has to be maintained, vegetated following development. And then as part of the form and character development permit discussions with staff, a naturalized landscaped rock outcropping area was identified as something that needed to be protected. So that was agreed to be protected through this process, but provides a further constraint. So that area will be left in its natural state and enhanced with further tree plantings and natural vegetation as part of the development. And then the final constraint has to do with just the zoning setbacks. So Colwood's zoning bylaw specifies setbacks on all property lines, and specific to this proposal is the setback along Olympian Way. You can see it in the yellow line there. And important to the overall rationale for this is that the street does have an arc to it. It's not straight, so you can see it dips into the building. And as a result, there is a portion of the building that does go into that setback area. So the requested variance is to reduce it from 7.5 meters down to 5.5, but I just highlight that that's at the maximum extent. Most of it is less than that. And so I think that I hope that helps the committee understand some of the constraints that we were up against. Well, it looks like a large property with a lot of room to move and develop. It really gets constrained quite quickly. And through those constraints, we were forced to move the building slightly forward, necessitating the variance proposed. So here's just a couple renders. This is looking down Olympian Way towards the roundabout. And this is looking in the opposite way, approximately above the roundabout, looking into the site. So that's all I had to present tonight. I would also add that we submitted a letter of support from Olympic View, the developer of the area. So they support the variance, and I believe that was provided with the package. Again, thanks, and we'd be happy to answer any questions the committee has.
Thank you for that presentation. I'll look to the committee if there are any questions from anyone. James, I was waiting for that mic to light up. Over to you.
Forgive me if I'm not reading it correctly, but on the rear yard, the setback is in one of the diagrams 7.5 meters, but it appears that the parking lot exceeds that. So it, or it comes short. Is there a variance already in place for the rear of the property, or am I misinterpreting the diagram?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Maybe staff, could you clarify? I wonder if you could clarify what the rear setback is.
So it actually is below the average natural grade, so therefore it's a below grade parking structure, and our permit our parking bylaw would permit that.
Oh, I understand it's below grade. All right, that answers that question. Thank you.
That's great. Is there any further questions? No? Yeah, I think I just have sort of a question comment. I think typically when it comes to requested variances, as long as it still allows for appropriate space for utilities and sidewalks and future roadworks, then I don't really see it being a concern for me. So maybe what we'll do, if there's no other specific questions, we'll get the recommendation on the floor for the committee to consider if somebody wants to make that motion. Somebody like to make the motion? Okay, great. Kathleen, thank you. Is there any comments? And I see none. So we will just pose the question. All in favor of the staff recommendation? And that's unanimous. Thank you. We're moving along nicely this evening. Okay. So we're going to be moving on to item 5.3. But before we do that, I know there was 2 members of the public that wished to speak. So if those, John, actually, if you wanted to come up, and you've already given your name.
I'll do it again. My name
Yeah.
is John Ruff, 721 Claudette Court. I've been a citizen of Colwood since 1995. Served 15 years with the volunteer fire department. So my concerns are, number one is water pressure that will be supplied to the area. I know at my house, the water pressure sucks. I know through working with the fire department on Blue Sky, there is an additional pump station to move the water to a higher height. So that would be my first question. Second question would be, as my property backs onto, there's a small alleyway for the cell tower, then 10 feet there, where there's a fence, and that's where the property starts. So when they start blasting, what assurances do I have? Are they going to come into my property and check for damage before they start blasting? Or am I on my own? I'm not against developing because my house is built in 2008. I understand, my house had to be built as well. So, and the area, speaking from an owner's position up there, is quite dry. So I'm not against the building itself. I just am concerned about water pressure and damaged during blasting.
Thank you. If you wanted to take a card there too, you certainly can if you have questions for staff. Thank you, John. Would you like to come up as well? Wonderful.
Hello, members of the committee, chairperson. My name is Rudy Stalker, and I live at 724 Demel Place, which is in close proximity to the subject property. And my wife is here with myself, and we have some concerns respecting the suitability of the site itself for the project as proposed. And these concerns fall into three general areas. One is the suitability for the target demographic. And the second would be environmental impacts, which may or may not have been considered in the environmental study, which was done. And the third concern has to do with the neighborhood, the impact on the neighborhood adjacent to the property. The target demographic for the project as proposed is likely to be younger couples, couples with children, and so on. And the city study, which was done, pointed out the park amenities which are in the area. One of the problems which we see is that there are no playgrounds whatsoever on Triangle Mountain. The park areas which are there are suitable for older people. They have trails, they're wilderness areas, they're wetlands, but they have nothing to do with small children. So smaller children probably really have nowhere to go. So if we establish a community like this, what provision is being made for them and for their care? The density of the proposed development is a bit of a concern for us. We're proposing 18 units on a site which originally would have held 3 or 4 under the existing zoning. That's a large number of people to put in a very small area on top of a mountain, the highest mountain in Colwood. That would entail, of course, a significant increase in vehicular traffic. And the problem that we see with that is that there is a single access to the site, which is constrained by the topography of the site. Looks like I'm done.
I think we could, if we get, if I look to the committee, we could probably extend it in another 2 minutes if the committee is comfortable with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So the entrance to the site is at the very top of Fulton Road. In fact, just slightly over the rise when you come up from the Soup Road side and around a small bend. So there's limited visibility for the entrance to the site. And then entering the site itself entails a very sharp turn onto the site. I know that one of the considerations was whether emergency vehicles would be able to make it onto the site, and it was demonstrated that within the site itself, of course, they could maneuver, but I question whether they'll be able to make that U-turn 180 degrees almost and get into the site. The second major concern that we have is the environmental impact of a larger population at the top of the hill. The site proposal itself has EV chargers being added to garages and bicycle parking being provided. The target demographic is unlikely to drive EVs, let's be frank. They're probably more likely to drive an F-150 than an EV. And nobody rides a bicycle to the top of Triangle Mountain. So that's not much of an argument there. My fellow resident here alluded to the water pressure. That was one of my points as well. If we're going to add 18 new homes to the existing system, my water pressure is also quite low as it is, and I question what the impact of the new development will be on that, and whether any measures are being proposed to address that potentially. And the last concern we have is to do with visitor parking. There are 2 spaces provided for 18 homes, and that seems slightly under.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for your time. Thank you for coming up. Appreciate it. Okay, so I will introduce item 5.3. 3415 Fulton Road. This is the last item up on our agenda, and it is a rezoning application, as mentioned, for 3415 Fulton Road. Once again, the committee will have the opportunity to listen to the presentation from staff and consider recommendations to endorse prior to forwarding to council. So with that, I'll invite Mari, again, Manager of Planning, to introduce the item and provide the committee with a presentation prior to opening up the floor for committee questions. So please go ahead, Mari. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is rezoning application 27 for the property at 3415 Fulton Road. The proposal is to rezone the property from R1 to HAH1 to enable an 18-unit townhome development. Richard Roy, our senior planner, is here to present the application, and we also have the applicant here in attendance, and they also have a presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you again, Mari and Chair and Committee. So next up on screen, a brief presentation, give an overview of the rezoning application at 3414 Fulton Road. Well, site context. So the property is located within the Triangle Mountain neighborhood and fronts onto Fulton Road. The site is currently heavily treed and undeveloped, aside from an existing communications tower located at the front of the property that is visible from Fulton Road. So the property is designated neighborhood hillside and is currently, the property is zoned neighborhood hillside and is currently zoned R1 residential. The surrounding neighborhood is also zoned R1 residential, with development consisting primarily of single-family homes in both freehold and strata formats, with a couple two-family dwellings also nearby. A large communication tower also resides on the property immediately adjacent to it on the west. So the proposal, the applicants have proposed a concept 18-unit townhouse development for the site. All required parking is to be provided on site. And the concept seeks to maintain 25% of the lot in a natural state, as well as provide a minimum 40% open space on the property. Also, as a condition of rezoning, the communications tower on the site will be removed. So the proposed concept takes a site adaptive approach by utilizing the existing driveway and clustering development essentially along the natural grades of the property. This seeks to minimize the amount of blasting on the site. The proposed concept maintains that the site's natural edges and the proposed concept maintains the site's natural edges and reduces potential impacts on neighboring properties and public views. Should the application be approved, additional site adaptive approaches may be explored through the detailed design of offsite works. These measures would aim to minimize blasting and maintain more of a naturalized frontage along Fulton Road. The official community plan. So the subject property falls within the neighborhood hillside land use designation, which envisions ground-oriented developments such as duplexes and townhouses. It emphasizes a site adaptive design requiring a minimum 40% open space and permitting a maximum floor area of 1.2. All right, so the land use bylaw. This application seeks to apply the HAH1 hillside attached housing zone to enable a higher density of residential uses, so attached housing. The HAH1 zone is a recent template zone which is intended to apply to the neighborhood hillside sites. The zone was recently approved to apply to the development site at 546 Winthrop Road. The zone would permit a proposed townhouse style development to a maximum of 3 stories and an FAR of 1.2. Staff are providing support and rezoning for 3415 Fulton Road. The proposal secures open space and environmental protections through the covenants, along with appropriate mitigation measures. Given its consistency with policy and modest scale, staff consider the application to be appropriate for approval. A development sign has been placed on the property. The applicants have conducted public consultation as per Colwood policy. Postcards will be sent out to neighbors within 100 meters of the property. Ads will be placed in the newspaper as well as publicized on our website. And the following options are before the Planning and Land Use Committee this evening, with a staff recommendation to approve the application with the conditions. As mentioned, the applicant is here to provide a presentation, answer any questions, and should you have any questions for staff, I would be happy to respond.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee, and thank you, staff, for all of your help and diligence to get us to this point today. So my name is Rachel Sansom, Greyland Consulting, and I'm here this evening representing the property owner, Mr. David Volka, who's with us tonight, as well as we have our arborist, Ray Proud from Tomahawk Tree Services, because certainly there may be questions about the existing trees on this property. Is that the end or the beginning? I think we're backwards. Go all the way to the beginning. And I think during this presentation, I'll be able to address some of the concerns that our neighbors brought forward this evening as well. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay, so there we are on Fulton Road. As noted, we are right behind the very large cell tower. It's not ours, but we are behind it. But we do have the smaller radio tower on that site. Again, we're proposed the hillside attached housing for residential townhomes. So there be 18 three-story, 4-bedroom family homes with 2 parking spaces per unit per your bylaw, as well as 3 visitor parking stalls. And that is in accordance with Colwood bylaws. And we are in accordance with the hillside and shoreline development permit area, preserving 40% of this space and preserving as many trees as we can. We are sharing the amenity spaces. The owner actually conducted the public consultation and sat down with many of our neighbors to understand their concerns. We are fully serviced by Colwood Sanitary Sewer and CRD Water. They were referred to with this process, as they are with all applications in the city of Colwood, and to date they haven't identified any issues. But we will, as part of the development permit process, have to do what they call FUS calculations and make sure there's enough water also for firefighting. So that will be covered off in applications to come as well. We're managing our stormwater on site for no increase to pre-development flows. And we are sharing the driveway that exists today with our neighbor. And there is a proposed private access road, and we are trying to follow the existing contours as best we can to minimize that blasting. So again, our existing conditions being in that hillside and shoreline development permit area. So currently in the R1 zone, we could do 6 Bearland strata homes. We could subdivide without having to come before you tonight. It would still require, though, a development permit. So essentially the footprint would be really similar because we still have to save that 40%. And my understanding is that it could be 6 single families with suites, but under Bill 44, and because this is not a well, that wouldn't be a rezoning, you could have as many as 4 per site. Whether they do it or not, I don't know, but the Bill 44 does allow for that. So it's a very similar footprint as we would have under the existing zone. The owner just chooses to do a townhouse project. It actually gives you more control over the land in a townhouse because you'll have a common property manager that'll make sure that the landscaping and the buildings are maintained, whereas a Bearland strata doesn't have quite that much control. And again, we will, the existing radio tower, it'll remain until the lease expires or a building permit is applied for, and then it will be removed. Oh, come on. There we go. So there's some pictures of the existing conditions. Again, we do have our arborist in attendance. So there's Arbutus and Douglas fir here, but it is very dry up here. And I know we've noticed over time in our neighborhoods, particularly at elevation, how the trees are kind of suffering. So we're hoping that the trees we do save and the trees we replace them with will be irrigated and maintained a little better than they are here today, so that we will be able to maintain a little bit of a healthier tree canopy with the development. So we are on a bus route. Route 59 goes by this property, and we are in walking distance to parks and green space. As noted, there aren't any specific large play parks in the area, but we will have landscaping and some play equipment and areas for the kids to wander around, should there be any on the property. So our biologist noted there was no environmental sensitivity specifically on this site. There aren't any riparian areas. And again, the existing tree canopy. So we have a couple of different species of trees that are considered a monoforest. This is to quote the arborist report. Trees in the area appear to be in various states of deterioration and decline, common with monocrop areas as pathogens and diseases spread rapidly. Multiple previous failures of large trees have been observed. Construction activities will have a low impact on the trees proposed for retention. In addition, we're not proposing any retaining walls over 1.2 meters high. What we might have is some rock cuts up to about 2 meters, but we're not adding retaining walls at this point. If we do, we'll come back and see you for variances. So just an idea of how the townhouses would look from the front elevation. On the north, I think it's the west side, so looking towards the large cell tower, they'll be stepping up. And on the east side, they'll be stepping down, sort of to make the most of the existing terrain and to minimize that blasting. And again, just a couple of different views of the proposed townhomes. These are done by Victoria Design Group. There's done a lot of design in the Victoria or Colwood-Langford area, and they understand the topography, they understand the market and what people are looking for. So our landscape plan, so again, we've got 40% preserved green space, both natural and enhanced. Native species are proposed within the landscape plan. We're proposing 4 replacement trees, Gary Oak and Douglas Fir. And again, these will have to be planted in accordance with the arborist recommendations, as well as our landscape architect, to make sure that they're going to survive with enough soil and irrigation. We're protecting there's 314 protected trees, 196 to be removed in their various states of health. 134 trees will be remained on site, and we'll try to maintain those and keep those ones healthy. Any deficit in that number will be made up in cash in lieu, which is payable at development permit. We will be working with drought resistant plantings, but they will be irrigated until established. And again, all of this will be done to Canadian standards. And throughout the project, nature trail seating areas and a few little play spaces where we can add those. So again, step code of the day: electric heat pumps for reduced fossil fuels, long-lasting, low-maintenance cladding. Being a strata, you're maintained by the strata. Everybody owns the exteriors of the buildings together. EV chargers for those that wish for them. Permeable patio pavers. Solar infrastructure ready, should the strata wish to do that. Bike storage in every garage. Energy Star appliances, and new trees to be planted with native and pollinator-friendly species. Concerns about emergency services. Our engineer, Westbrook Consulting, has, actually I didn't put it on this slide, which I should have done, shows how the Colwood fire truck can get into the site and then make the 2-point turn within the property in order to get in and out safely. So it's designed for the fire truck geometry. These will be sprinklered, and again, we have to prove out the water supply at development permit. Again, the site servicing will have that sort of green blob in the middle is a gallery to collect the stormwater and discharge it at a natural rate. So there won't be any increase in stormwater leaving this site. We are designing the services to preserve trees as best we can. So we're following that existing road and trying not to make too many cuts and fills that will impact the tree roots. We do have a walkway on the left-hand side of the upper road that comes down to the lower road for the convenience of the residents. As noted, the Fulton road improvements, you can see on the right-hand side of the road there, that to cut that to provide sidewalks, streetlights, boulevard would be really impactful. We're trying to save as many trees as we can, and to create that full road cross-section would be quite damaging. It could be done. So we will be coming back for a variance for that, likely. Yeah, as you can see, there's already a sidewalk on the other side of the road. As I noted, our owner met with several neighbors. We did notify the neighbors in a 100-meter radius. Concerns about the trees, particularly the ones to remain, that they're wind firm and won't be causing any damage to their properties. And about the preservation of the trees and green space, again, the 40% to be preserved or enhanced. And then just to address some of our neighbors' concerns, again, we noted that the water pressure will be proven out as a condition of development permit. Blasting is done by private companies that are industry regulated. They're very heavily insured, and they will notify neighbors. So I believe Colwood has a blasting permit that you have to take out. And in that permit, the companies have to prove their insurance and have to prove that they notified the neighbors. So there won't be any surprises. We have designed this site to minimize the blasting as best we can by working with the existing topography. Again, our biologist has reviewed this site and found that there was actually no sensitive ecosystems on site. We've addressed emergency access with the Colwood Design fire truck with our civil engineers. And we did have a traffic study done, which is standard procedure in Colwood, to make sure that the roads and the sight lines are appropriate. EV chargers, again, we'll rough it in. If people need them, they're available. If they don't, given the gas prices, I'm sure more people are going to have those. Oh, I've been buzzed off.
I think,
And visitor parking is per bylaw. There we go. That was it.
oh,
So we're here for your questions if you need.
thank you, Rachel, for the presentation. I will open the floor to committee questions. Okay, Kathleen.
Just wondering if the city staff could confirm that the issue with respect to water pressure will be dealt with.
Yeah, certainly. That's something that would be proved out at the development permit stage, in that they will have to be able to prove that they can meet that once they do a fulsome civil plan for the property.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else on the committee have any questions for staff or James?
The communications, or it's a radio tower, not a cellular tower. Is it in active service? And you said there's a lease that's expiring?
I understand. We'll look at David. That the lease is renewed every 5 years, and I think it's Virgin Radio that's there now. It's not the cell tower. The cell is the big one in behind.
Okay. And you also mentioned play equipment, but in the current sort of drafting and renderings, I didn't see anything in particular. Where do you intend for that to be placed?
Through the chair, we didn't have specific play equipment as in a traditional playground planned, because we do have to be sensitive to the 40% area we're trying to preserve. So generally, and I think we did this on the Winthrop townhouse project you guys saw last year, is we try to fit in logs or things for the kids to play on as opposed to structures, just to make sure there's gathering areas, but there's something for the kids to do while they're in there. So it's not necessarily swings, but it's logs to climb on, or maybe a little structure to jump up and on, or a sand pit or something fun that they could do while their parents are hanging out and talking together. But again, we don't want to impact the trees and the 40% that we're trying to preserve. So it's a little bit of a balancing act with that. But when we come in for a development permit, if we get that far, we can maybe detail that a little bit more.
And then to staff, when we talk about water pressure, do we understand what sort of current standing pressure is available, and when was the last time a measurement was made? What are the known issues? There must be some gut feel as to whether or not 18 residences being introduced, each with their own demand, could have a level of impact that is, puts it below any sort of requirement. I don't know much about that standardization.
Yeah, I mean, as planning staff, I defer to the engineering department, but so the CRD actually is the owner of the water in the area. So there are minimum standards. The fire department also has their minimum standards for flow. So those things would be reviewed to make sure that we're meeting those minimum standards at the development permit stage. I don't have a comment on where we're currently at.
And if I could just add that FUS assessment is also conducted at the building permit stage as well. So there are a number of touch points where we do assess water supply. But as Richard mentioned, that is managed by the CRD.
Yeah, I guess what I'm mostly trying to drive towards is, right now we're looking at a rezoning. The report also notes that there are variances already required based on current plans. There's other variances likely going to be asked for in order to make for a proper roadway. So before going down the pathway of rezoning, if there's already an obstacle that we know would become a notable hurdle, that'd be arguably insurmountable to get larger pipes from the CRD up to the top of the Triangle Mountain. Just trying to avoid going down a pathway unnecessarily if we know that there's already a threshold that we're near crossing. So I don't know how often we connect with the CRD and how much we know about the current state of water flow and pressure.
So as part of rezoning applications, we do have external referrals that we send out to the CRD. Typically, we don't hear from them unless there is an issue. For this one, we did not get a response. We also will send that referral back out at development permit stage as well. So those external stakeholders are sort of involved in all of the steps of the process as well. So we will ensure to have those checkpoints with them.
Okay, thank you.
That's great, thank you. I have a question, just with respect to the blasting. Do we take a deposit? Can you speak to that for blasting? Like we hold funds,
So yes, we do have a blasting permit application. The application does get referred out to all internal departments. I would have to double check the deposit requirement for it. We can check right now and let you know.
yeah, no, that's okay, because I do recall these have come up several times with other developments where there's like a deposit that's held, and if there is a complaint, then the funds are, you basically fined. So yeah, just some clarity on that would be great. I think the community would appreciate knowing that. So I think one of the questions, and quite a few of them were answered tonight by Rachel, thank you, and staff, but I'm going to direct this to staff. Can you clarify why this is being advanced to 3 readings at this stage versus a phased approach? And has there been direct engagement? I know we've talked about, direct engagement outside of just a notice to neighbors with nearby residents, and what feedback has been received. So it's sort of 2 questions, really, why we're going to 3 readings, just the nature of this particular development in this area. I was just surprised to see that the recommendation was for first, second, and third reading. So I was just wondering what the rationale was with that. And then, of course, the second question, just any further direct engagement with residents and feedback would be appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So our typical process for rezoning applications is for the application to go forward for first, second, and third. That is the direction that staff have received from council. So that is our process. Should council wish to just give the application first and second, that would be up to council's decision. That is certainly something that we will explore as part of reviewing our development approvals process, to sort of give staff more authority to determine when it is appropriate to go for first, second, and third versus just first or first and second. So that's something that we will certainly be exploring as part of our development approvals process review, which will be happening later this year. In response to the neighborhood engagement, the applicant can certainly speak more to it, but that is a requirement to have a neighborhood engagement meeting. That is a requirement for rezoning applications, so they can certainly speak more to that. When the application does proceed to council, the city will send out notices for properties within 100 meters of the subject property. We also post in the Goldstream Gazette, and then on our website as well. So there are a number of platforms that we use to communicate the application.
No, that's great. Thank you. I think it's good for the committee to understand sort of what that process is. And I'm not sure if the applicant can speak to any engagement, in-person engagement with the residents. Has that been planned for?
Yes, Madam Chair, the owner actually went around the neighborhood and hand delivered notices and met with several neighbors personally and sat down with many of them as well. Some of them have returned back to us with emails with concerns, and also a commitment to meet with some of the neighbors prior to construction, should we get that far. And they do have our contact information, and I would like to provide our neighbors here this evening with my card as well, so they can reach out to us if they have further concerns. But we did do the prescribed consultation as recommended by staff.
Okay, thank you. So that has already happened then. Okay. Okay, thank you. Are there any other further questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. Seeing that there are no further questions, there is a staff recommendation for the committee to consider. If someone would like to make that motion to put it on the floor. Wonderful. We'll go with Trina. How about that? Okay. So there's also 3 other options for the committee to consider here, and these are all in front of you this evening. And the staff recommendation is that the Planning and Land Use Committee consider recommending to Council that Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151, 1989, amendment number 231, bylaw number 2105, 2026 be given first, second, and third readings, and that prior to adoption of the amending bylaw, the following long-term conditions be registered. And so I will call the question. All in favor? And it is unanimous. So that motion has carried. And that actually brings us to the end of the meeting this evening. So if I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting. We'll give that one to Kathleen. All in favor? All in favor? Wonderful. Motion carried. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you.